our agitator in chief. That's what President Obama has become. Today we're going to look at race baiting and his childhood and just kind of probe some issues that he might have about being a dad. All on today's Voice of Resistance.
Those who forsake the law praise the wicked. Those who uphold the law resist them. Welcome to the Voice of Resistance. Here's your host, Randall Terry.
Well, if there was ever any question in your mind about the green trees behind me being a part of a green screen, I hope that we have put that forever to rest. Because you've noticed that the leaves are all gone. It's really cold out here. That's why I'm wearing a leather coat over my normal garb. We ask you to pray for us. There are workers here right now. We're trying desperately to get our studio finished. I'll talk more about that as the show progresses. I want to focus today for a few minutes on President Obama himself and look at him from different angles. We're all familiar with what's going on. You have the grand jury refusing to indict the police officer who choked to death Eric Gardner. Now people are saying, well, look, there was a African-American woman on the scene as the sergeant, and therefore it's not a race crime. And you've got the Black Panther and some of the more intense and perhaps violent elements of the African-American community trying to stoke the fires of perhaps riots. You've got I don't remember what they called themselves, the Black Guerrilla Family in New York City calling for assassinations of on-duty police officers. So things are a little bit stressed out, to say the least. And one poll after another shows that race relations are at a multi-year low. They are far lower right now than they were when President Obama took office. What's going on? I think that we're dealing with an angry black man. All right, an angry young black man, to be more precise. And it's almost comical because President Obama is half white. Now, before I go any further in this analysis, I want to point out two things. Number one, I have two African-American children that I adopted and raised, okay? One of them, God rest his soul, was killed in a head-on car crash 3 years ago. And my daughter is alive and well, and I thank the Lord, and she thanks the Lord. I actually rescued her from abortion, from death's door at an abortion mill. So, for those of you who are tempted, our adversaries who watch this show, who are tempted to say that any of my remarks are based on racism, I have a lot of things that I would say to you, but I'll just leave it to say that you're quite mistaken. And the second thing that I want to point out is about Obama being half African-American and half white. His dad, who was black and from Africa, is who abandoned him. All right? His white mom raised him. His white grandparents raised him. And his embracing of the agitator, the angry black man that he was as a child. I think it has a lot more to do with his dad abandoning him than any sense of oppression that he would have felt growing up in Hawaii, being raised by a white mom and white grandparents. I mean, are you following me? There's something here that is at one point ludicrous and at the other point far more, in my opinion, far more clinical. And it has to do with his dad. I'm not a psychoanalyst, I'm not a psychologist, so I'll leave it at that. But there are other people that write on these things, and there are other people that have mused about these things, and I think that they're right. And let's talk about the black agitator. And by the way, when I use the phrase black, what I mean is in the best sense of the civil rights movement and people who agitated for the sake of justice, all right? Without question, there has been grotesque injustice and violence against the African American community here, perpetrated by white Americans. It's simply true, okay? It's simply true. Whether it's slavery, whether it's the Ku Klux Klan, whether it's the Jim Crow laws, whether it's the disproportionate number of African Americans that are in prison, there clearly is a long history of racial tension and injustice in this country. But I don't think that Obama felt much of it as a young man growing up. He might have felt it when he moved to Chicago. That's his story to tell. But the agitator, the man who learned as reading the works of civil rights activists, learned that if you agitate, if you cause a fuss, you can get political results that you otherwise would not have received. All right? That is one of the great lessons of Gandhi. It's one of the great lessons of Dr. Martin Luther King, is that you can create tension to achieve a political goal. The question is the goal just? Is the goal right? If Marxists create tension to force people to part with their hard-earned goods and to redistribute the wealth at the point of a gun from the government, their tension may create the end that they desire, but it's an unjust, unholy end. And I submit to you that President Obama's agenda, all right, whether it's from the child killing part of his agenda, the same-gender marriage part of his agenda, the redistribution of wealth part of his agenda, the anti-police part of his agenda, the government takeover of the entire healthcare system part of his agenda, the dictatorial powers he is exercising with a brazen face agenda regarding the immigrants. When you take a look at the totality of his agenda, he is set about on a path that is the destruction of the old Christian order and the establishment of a new pagan order. And he's being incredibly successful. I'll be right back.
Hey, everyone's been asking me, when's Unstoppable coming out on DVD? Well, it's here. And I have created my own deluxe signature version of Unstoppable that contains not only the movie, but over 5 hours of additional curriculum and study guides for your family. It's perfect for your homeschool, educational facility, small group Bible study, and family devotions. And I'm going to share with you some of the spiritual warfare that surrounded the release of this film. This box set also includes extended scenes, new music videos, the inside scoop on the whole Facebook controversy. So what are you waiting for? I made this special version with my family in mind, and I know your family will be blessed by it too. Unstoppable 2.0 Deluxe Signature Version, available only here at KurtCameron.com. I can't wait for you to experience what's inside.
Let me try and bring some of the points I was making in the first segment to a head here. There's ample evidence that Obama's dad was a Marxist, okay? And there's clear evidence that President Obama, regardless of his dad, President Obama has Marxist tendencies. And by that I mean a godless state where every child is a child of the state. A godless state that promotes and protects the murder of unborn babies. A godless state that forces Christian institutions to pay for drugs that kill unborn babies. A godless state that will not permit a state to say no to same-gender marriage. A godless state that forces the redistribution of the wealth. And he is helping toward those goals, in part by defying the law, in part by encouraging people to agitate, in part by being an agitator himself verbally. And I early on in the intro I said that there's something there that's about parenting. And I think that he is still working through living through the fact that he was abandoned as a boy by his dad, and that there's a part of him that thinks it's okay for all parents at some level or another to abandon their children into the hands of strangers. Now, there's a clip, I'm going to play it in a second, that's making the rounds right now. This is from a speech that he gave probably 5-6 weeks ago, and it was kind of ignored when it happened, but now this clip has emerged. Lane, play the clip, and we'll see what we're talking about.
And sometimes someone, usually mom, leaves the workplace to stay home with the kids, which then leaves her earning a lower wage for the rest of her life as a result. And that's not a choice we want Americans to make. So let's make this happen. By the end of this decade, let's enroll 6 million children in high-quality preschool.
All right, so you can see how some stay-at-home moms would be ticked when he said this is a choice we don't want people to have to make, to stay at home with their children. And then, well, let's really work by the end of the decade to get 6 million children into pre-K care by total strangers. And Snopes, who I respect, who ferrets out whether or not something that's being promoted online is true or false. Snopes rose to the president's defense and said, well, this comment was taken out of context, and he was really talking about availability of good daycare and the struggle of two parents working. And the full context of his comments is actually worse, because the premise of Obama's speech was that the best that can happen for our culture and for our children is that a mom and dad both work outside the home, and that these children have great programs with great opportunities where mom and dad can drop them off when they're 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 years old. There are a lot of moms alive today at various ages who really regret that they were not home with their children when they were small. They missed out on the development of their children. There are a lot of parents who regret that they did not have the hours that they would have liked to mold the fiber of their child's character. It was left to the hands of strangers. It was left to a small mob of other children. I mean, think of the Lord of the Flies. Think of how mean kids can be to other kids. Think of the things that happen in daycare. I've got a friend who said that he remembers being 1 and 2 years old and being taken and put in a high chair in daycare while his Christian mom and Christian dad were working, and left in the high chair for hours on end because he was overactive and he was a little bit mischievous. In other words, he was a boy. He was behaving like a boy, and their way of dealing with him, his daycare, involved him getting put in a high chair. So, as you look at Obama's agenda, as you look at his agitation, as you look at what he's trying to accomplish with a godless state, I want you to just remember a few things. Number one, it's his ethics that are the problem. I believe in agitation for a righteous goal, but agitation for an unholy goal or an unrighteous goal is in fact unholy and unrighteous. Number two, he was abandoned by his dad and now wants to structuralize to make it so that moms and dads can go to work. If you're working an 8-hour day and you have a long commute, you might be gone for 10 hours of the day. He wants it so that moms and dads can dump off their kids and have someone else raise them. The nanny state, the daddy state, the mommy state. To what end, President Obama? So that they become good little socialists. So that the programs that these children, the ideas that these children are receiving are inherently godless state ethics. The pro-baby killing, the pro-birth control, the pro-same-gender marriage, the pro-redistribution of wealth. When these kids grow up to become adults and they have nursed at the breast of big government for their whole life, What kind of adults does that make them? What political agenda will they have? So I'm not certain that I have made my point as well as I would like, and I'll continue trying in the next segment. But just understand this, that there's something about President Obama's childhood and about his own parenting that is a source of the evil that this man is promoting. Do you want to get America out of the hands of wicked and unjust men and women who are destroying the republic before our eyes, and put leadership back into the hands of righteous men and women so that we don't die as a nation? Well, you're talking about social revolution, and there are rules in social revolution. We can look at the victorious social revolutions of the past, such as the end of slavery, the end of child labor, women's voting rights, the end of segregation, and so much more, and learn from their victories. Look at their actions, their images, their rhetoric, their sacrifices, and their final fruit. We will send you this series that originally cost $129, 7 books for students, 1 teacher's guide, if you'll give a gift of any size and just pay for shipping and handling. Take advantage of it today. When President Obama made the comment about moms being able to put their kids in daycare, I want to roll that tape again, all right, Lane? Let's roll it again.
And sometimes someone, usually mom, leaves the workplace to stay home with the kids, which then leaves her earning a lower wage for the rest of her life as a result. And that's not a choice we want Americans to make. So let's make this happen. By the end of this decade, let's enroll 6 million children in high-quality preschool.
All right, so you see here he's saying that poor moms, they give up all this money they could have been earning, and they're not as high as they would have been in the food chain of their job structure, and we need to have daycare for 6 million kids. In the speech that he gave, he talked about the struggle that parents have where they feel guilty, like they're not being good parents. President Obama, your guilt is well deserved. Let me step back and speak to you Christians that are watching. I think one of the reasons that we don't, as a Christian community, that we don't properly fight against the murder of innocent babies, and this is going to hurt some of you. I'm letting you know ahead of time. This is going to be a zinger. But hear me out and ponder what I'm about to say. One of the reasons that we in the Christian community don't fight against child killing the way we should is because we secretly sympathize with the reasons that a woman kills her baby. We secretly sympathize. I mean, think about it. What are the reasons that single women give for killing their children? They want to stay in college. They want to have a better job. They can't take the pressure of having a child. Go down the list of reasons. And then think of the reasons why Christian folks, Christian couples, don't have more babies. Why they use birth control. Why they drop their kids off at daycare. There are a lot of moms who want to stay home. There are a lot of moms who want to have as many kids as God will give them. But there is a far greater number of people in the Christian community today who don't want to have all the children that God gives them, who want to have whatever the material things might be, or the liberty of movement, or the ability to have fun and to have amusement, that they want to have those things, and children get in the way. You can't have both. Children are the Waterloo for women, and oftentimes for men. And so in the speech that Obama was talking about having 6 million kids go to daycare, he he threw out the idea that the wrestling, the struggling that parents have, feeling like bad parents. Well, let me tell you, Mr. Obama, if you and your wife were both making really good money when you had your daughters, but you still chose to drop the girls off at daycare, I'm going to tell you what other people maybe are afraid to tell you. You were bad parents. You were. You had the chance to have a healthy, time-honored relationship with your daughters, and instead you chose money and career? There's something perverse about that. The church has taught that the family is the first church. The church has taught that the family is the foundation of society. Well, if you take your children and put them in the hands of someone else to catechize them, to disciple them, to train them, if you let some godless state decide what the foundation of society will look like, how can we be shocked when our kids don't turn out like we want them? Or I'll go a step further to bring it all the way around to young black men. The last statistics that I read were that 1 in 4 young black men under 25 were in jail, on parole, in prison, on probation. Right? 1 in 4. That's an astronomical number. But if you look at those young black men, the vast majority of them come from single-parent homes. They come from single moms, who are either on welfare without a dad or putting the kids in daycare. There's a breakdown of the family. And so rather than say, let's have 6 million children in daycare, why don't we say, let's have 6 million children. Let's work it out so that 6 million children can, in fact, stay home with their moms, and who can then catechize them and raise them and love them and help them to become good and stable on their interior, rather than throwing them into a room with 20 or 30 other kids and saying, good luck, this is daycare so that we can make money. We have put together what we call an online university for you. Now that's a highfalutin way of saying that we have a pretty significant library of material, books, tapes, videos that are there for you for free. Why are we doing this? Because America is desperate for new leaders, and because this material could help you to become the leader that you and God want you to be. Check it out and enjoy it. For the record, I am not opposed in any manner, shape, or form to women working outside of the home. My wife and I regularly discuss, when the boys are grown, does she want to go into nursing? Does she want to go into law, get her law degree? That's not the issue. But the issue is, for some, there are people watching this show who would love to stay home, and they can't afford it. In the 1950s and prior to that, a man could work outside the home and he could make a working wage and provide for his whole family, and his wife didn't have to work if she didn't want to. But the tax structure has put such a crushing burden on working Americans that the average working guy, half of his money goes to taxes. This is horrifying. To pay for what? Huge government programs. And now he doesn't have enough money to provide for his family, so for many of them, the wife has to work outside of the home just to survive. This is horrific. This is a crime against families. And Obama and his henchmen and their ideological cohorts, they are at the core of this. So, I'm out of time. I know I've given you a lot of food for thought, but I want to encourage you. If you're a Christian couple, have as many babies as God gives you. If you can work it out for mom to stay at home and live a more frugal life, at the end of your life, you're not going to say, oh, I wish I'd worked more. But you might say, I wish I'd spent more time with my children when they were small. Those are some of the regrets that we have later in life. So let's think to the end of the matter and think of what would we like to be like when we're on our deathbed, and then structure our lives to reach that goal. If you like this program and you want to help us financially, please go to the website that you see on your screen. We've got to raise money to finish our studio. You see that it's under construction. We need help. If you want to give, if you like the message, please help. If you can't help, please pray for us.